She know what to find in my sidelines. Thinking about someone. Think I wanna argue. Think I wanna argue.
What does that mean? Tarot birth cards. Are those the tarot cards associated with February 24th? Is that how that works? The Hanged Man and the Empress. Is that like universal? Like I can look up the Hanged Man card and the Empress card on Google and it'll pop up what you're talking about? Hanged Man, tarot card, meanings. Pause, surrender. Upright, pause, surrender. Letting go, new perspective. Reverse, delays, resistance, stalling, decision. Hangman shows a man suspended from a T-shaped cross. What? Made of living wood. He is hanging upside down, viewing the world from a completely different perspective. Ooh. And his facial expression is calm and serene, suggesting that he is in this hanging position by his own choice. He has a he has a halo around his head, symbolizing new insight, awareness, and enlightenment. Interesting. This is me, guys. His right foot is bound to the tree, but his left foot remains free. Ooh. Bent at the knee and tucked in behind his right leg. His arms are bent, with hands held behind his back, forming an inverted triangle. The man is wearing red pants representing human passion and the physical body, and a blue vest for knowledge. The Hangman is the card of ultimate surrender, of being suspended in time, and of martyrdom and sacrifice to the greater good. Bruh. Reverse creative block dependence on others. The Empress is a beautiful, full-figured woman with blonde hair and a peaceful aura about her. On her head, she wears a crown of 12 stars, showing her connection with the mystical realm and the cycles of the natural world, the 12 months of the year and 12 planets. Her robe is patterned with pomegranates, symbolic of fertility, and sits upon a luxurious array of cushions and flowing red velvet. One cushion features a symbol of Venus, planet of love, creativity, fertility. She draws her sense of peace from the trees and the water and is rejuvenated by the energy of nature. In the foreground, golden wheat springs from the soil, reflecting abundance from a recent harvest. Interesting. Okay, so the Hangman and the Empress were the two cards that Garcia said was associated with my birth. And then together, you are a soulful creative with this tarot birth card combination. You have the gift of creative expression, and you do so by taking a step back and seeing the world from a different angle. You may be more passive and contemplative by nature, but it allows you to open up to new experiences and new perspectives that others do not see. This allows your creativity to blossom and come forth in new and exciting ways. True. As an artist, your art comes from a soulful, spiritual place. I can see that. It's interesting. I think when I was reading the Empress, it was just kind of like, all right, that's cool. There was nothing that stood out to me really, but a lot stood out to me with Hangman. And so it said that you gotta ask these questions. What do I need to learn from this card? What symbols, colors, pictures, features, stories am I drawn to? How can I face the challenges shown in this card? How can I make the most of the opportunities shown in this card? How can I tap into deeper qualities and talents of this card? Well, first off, this dude's suspended from a T-shaped cross. Also hanging upside down, viewing the world from a completely different perspective. I said that I mentioned in my last night's stream when I was talking to Labor Kyle, how when I first started considering that I should be a pastor, and I slowly started confessing it to different friends because I felt like God told me that I'm supposed to be a pastor and I didn't believe it. Each of my friends was like, yeah, totally. And one of the reasons they gave was they said, or the two reasons each of them gave was, you think differently from all my other friends and you're able to challenge me on stuff. So all of them, all my friends have always told me that I enjoy talking with you because you see things and think about things differently than my other friends. Or they'll say, I think you should do this thing of communicating in a larger way because you think or see differently. So I think that's interesting because I've always been told that. And I remember when I was 16 that, I mean, there was the typical teenage isolation of like, how come nobody's seeing what I see in the world type stuff. But I think there was also a unique perspective within me mixed with it, so it made it even harder. that typical teenage perspective. But and his facial expression is calm and serene, suggesting that he is in this hanging position by his own choice. I think that's interesting too. Hanging, it's like there's a sacrifice going on here, you know? Someone like this can choose to just live as everyone else does. Choose to be a normie. Choose to follow what everyone else is doing in order to be accepted more easily, in order for life to be easier, in order to not swallow so many hard pills, in order to, metaphorically, in order to be naive and therefore not have to have so much existential dread that comes from intentionally putting your place in a position where you see things differently. And yet you get to a point where it's like, this is what I needed to do all along though. It's like, I can't go back. It's like, so I've talked to a few friends like who've left evangelical church about like people in my old church who weren't in ministry, but just like took everything for granted that they heard and just like had like a very simple faith. And sometimes I think like, I wish I was that naive so that I wouldn't have to put up with all this existential dread and constantly thinking. But then it's like thinking more about it. It's like, no, I'm glad I'm not that because it's worth it. It ends up being worth it. Even in the midst of existential dread, it ends up being worth seeing the truth. He has a halo around his head, symbolizing new insight, awareness, and enlightenment. His right foot. I thought this was interesting. I don't know how other people interpret this. This is my first time like reading a tarot card, by the way, so I have no clue how this was meant to be interpreted or how other people interpret this. But when I read, his right foot is bound to the tree, but his left foot remains free. This reminds me of like a huge, and most of you know this, a huge part of my journey has been looking at history, looking at the tradition, where it feels like leaving the evangelical church wasn't me leaving Christianity or leaving the larger tradition that I was a part of, but it was me seeing how large the tradition is, and therefore feeling like, why am I in this little corner of the tradition that is relatively new, that misreads a lot of stuff that is largely influenced by modern weird twistings of the world instead of the larger tradition? And so it's like, I like even my last sermon series at the youth group before I left that was about church history, and I didn't think that was gonna be my last one. It just happened like that. I got to a point where I realized I had to go, and so I left as soon as I could, like a month after I decided. And so the last sermon series ended up being this sermon series where I went through church history. And it's funny, like I remember some friends pointing out that it kind of sort of looked like I was saying, look how large the church actually is, so large that I'm leaving this one. I'm leaving this local church. So anyway, so I think a very important part of this whole thing has been tradition. Because, I mean, and then when I say tradition, I mean the tradition, the long stream within the tradition of radical Christianity. And Like, I remember years ago, a friend, like, hearing the way I talk about Jesus, saying, like, and not being really all that familiar with religion, he's like, I feel like the way you talk about this stuff is like, you're something else. It's like you're a neo-Christian is like the word I would use. You're like a neo-Christian. And I remember being, like, kind of annoyed about that, because I was like, I'm trying to, like, reclaim the radical root of this thing that has always been here, that I could find a source within throughout all church history. I would say the neo-Christians are the right-wing evangelicals. They're the ones doing something new and weird. I don't feel like I'm doing something new. I'm trying to follow this radical stream that has always been within the tradition. So anyway, so a big part of what I do is bound to the tree. Bound to the tradition. Bound. Cannot get away from it. Or I've even said, like with my New Agey friend, very good friend, we've had a lot of conversations about spirituality, and I remember she was telling me that the problem she has with these other religions besides New Agey stuff is that it seems like they act like they figured out all the answers. Actually, I don't think she didn't explicitly say this. She said things that kind of related with this, and then I was able to say, like, are you saying this? She said yes. That she feels like they act like they figured it out a long time ago. We figured out all the answers thousands of years ago, and we just follow them. And I had told her that the problem I have with New Age religion is it seems like they act like we figured out all the answers ourselves. All these thousands of years of religion, they couldn't figure it out, and we figured it out this generation. And so that's what I mean also when I say, like, a huge part of my journey and my work has been like a commitment to the tradition. But anyway, so right foot bound to the tree. I feel that's when I read that, I think of my commitment to the tradition and trying to remind people of the historical tradition that is radical Christianity. But his left foot remains free. So at the same time, I'm all about the new, the future, progress. God is pulling us toward greater love and justice and progress. We need to keep moving. We need to keep evolving. We need to continue to learn and find ways that we can be more inclusive, more open, more just, more loving than all the previous generations have. And so that's what I think. Like, that's the first thing that came to mind, like, immediately when I read, literally immediately when I read his right foot is bound to the tree, but his left foot remains free. It's like, those have been the two big parts of myself, is a commitment to history. Like, I'm part of this long historical tradition that is committed to justice, and I'm committed to the future and progress that is coming and trying to pull people to greater progress. Yeah, this whole paragraph I felt like spoke to me a lot. Not much the Empress card, but this whole. So and then it says, bent at the knee and tucked in behind his right leg. His arms are bent, hands held behind his back. And that's what I'm saying too. Like, it's completely his own choice. His hands aren't tied behind his back. He's holding them behind his back, tied to the tree by choice, forming an inverted triangle. I feel like there's some symbolism there with the inverted triangle that I don't know about, but yeah, I don't know. Wearing red pants representing human passion and the physical body, and a blue vest for knowledge. Passion and knowledge. That's what you get on the Damon stream. Every time. Passion and knowledge. The hangman is the card of ultimate surrender, being suspended in time, and of martyrdom and sacrifice to the greater good. Oh no. Yeah. We'll see what happens, you know? Yeah. And then also, like, once again, like, tied to the tree by choice. I stay within this tradition of Christianity by choice, where it's like, I'm not staying here because somebody tricked me into thinking that this is where I need to be, and I'm not staying here because I'm under the impression that this is the only one absolute truth. No other truth, no other way. And I also think of, like, the Buddha saying it is better to dig one well 6 foot deep if you want water than to build 6 wells 1 foot deep. And like he said that in talking about the topic of choosing a spiritual tradition and going all the way in instead of just having surfacey takes on all spiritual traditions. You choose one and go all the way in. So that's why I feel like too with clinging to the Christian tradition is like, this is the tradition that I choose to dig deep into and pull inspiration from, acknowledging that all the other faiths have great stuff to say too. And so I'll be in relation with people of other faiths who have dug super deep into their tradition, and then we share the unique gifts from our different spiritual traditions together to make a better world. But this is where I'm pulling from. And then together, apparently, I'm a soulful creative expression. You do so by taking a step back and seeing the world from a different angle. You may be more passive and contemplative by nature, which I am, but it allows you to open up to new experiences, which it does, and new perspectives that others do not see. Absolutely. This allows your creativity to blossom, exactly, and come forth in new and exciting ways. There we go. It's more interesting and meaningful than a simple coexist sticker. Yeah, exactly. So lame. So lame. As an artist, your art comes from a soulful, spiritual place. All right. Well, there we go.